And whether that's through death or through, um, you know, actual injury or psychological trauma, like if you look at that, the way we take care of veterans in this country, you could see pretty much how they feel about our military. And I get it's a hard thing, and sometimes war maybe is inevitable. I would like to argue that diplomatically you can always reach a point, but that's just not feasible. Sometimes war probably is inevitable, but it's tough to call yourself, a democratized civilization globally for the most part, and then you always just resort to violence the moment someone doesn't give in to your demands. That isn't really. I mean, I don't know if I'm reading it wrong, but to me, that doesn't scream, I'm a diplomat. That screams, I'm authoritarian. Do what I say. Like, it started out with, no nukes. Okay. And I'm of the belief that they only enriched up to 60% to get to a point where nukes would have been plausible as a deterrent. Hey, we have the capability to make it. And, um, so it was no nukes, okay? And give up all your nuclear program. Well, they can't give up the whole nuclear program. They use that for energy, so they're reduced back to the 3 to 5% they were using to produce energy. Nope, no nuclear at all. Okay, so a country trying to build their infrastructure is not supposed to build any type of alternative energy infrastructure either because oil doesn't exist forever. I don't know how much we have, and they've been saying we've been running out forever. I don't really know how much is actually there. But I'm going to argue that there's probably more than we're aware of, but not as much as we would like. And it is, whether you believe this or not, and you can look this up, is a renewable resource, but it takes thousands of years to generate it, I believe. Listen, I'm not an oil expert. I don't know how long it takes to make it, but it's been here for a long time, and we're using it at a pretty fast rate. So it's not going to be here forever, and we need alternative energies. And nuclear is a really good one. And anybody trying to build their country out, probably a good idea to have nuclear energy of some kind. It's also super important, and you know, we as the United States did this to the rest of the world. We raced in the 40s to get the nuke, to drop the bomb on Nagasaki and Hiroshima and decimate those cities, to force Japan into um surrender. And now, there's quite a few countries that have nuclear weapons, and we all live on this edge of, oh, you won't press them because of mutually assured destruction. If you do not have that nuke, i.e., Somalia, Sudan, Libya, this is a few to name. If you don't have it, the countries that do can come in and fucking rock your shit and disrupt your country, destroy your government, and send you into chaos. That sprouts up warlords, and now all of a sudden your country's just in insane turmoil, and your quality of life couldn't be better if you picked up a gun and tried to make it better, because more than likely you're going to get killed in those countries. So, you can't blame North Korea, even though they have a weird system and they keep their people oppressive. Hey, that's on the North Koreans to do something about it. We got to stop operating on this false identity of fucking liberation. We I would like to point out we haven't liberated anybody. Is Iraq better off now than it was? It's hard to say that it is. It seems pretty much the fucking same. I mean, you don't hear about it anymore. Not it's because we're not in there. Um, and Libya's worse off. Yemen, we bombed the absolute shit out of Yemen. Can't say they're better off. Somalia's definitely not better off. And then on top of that, we took in a bunch of their refugees. And so then, they're defrauding our healthcare system. But that's a different topic that we've discussed. Um, so, I mean, I say all of this to just point out some individual points that bring the culmination of this is a bad fucking idea. Not to mention that the energy infrastructure in terms of oil and stuff that's related to the world from Iran, the Middle East in general. They produce oil, the energy stuff that we get from them, not just us, but China and Russia. Like you're talking about possibly destroying an infrastructure that becomes very, very important. We already did the Venezuela thing, and we did that in a much more tactile um, way, you know? And even if you didn't like it, you could say, okay, well, the whole operation was pretty successful. It was pretty mellow. We went in, we got the guy. Yes, people died, but we didn't destroy the whole country. It left the infrastructure in place for the most part. We're going to profit off of it with the oil and everything. Do I think it's right? No. But, I mean, I guess it's beneficial for us. But that one still has time to pan out and see whether or not it'd be beneficial. I struggle to think any idea of foreign policy from any administration in the last 70 years. Even FDR probably didn't have that great of a foreign policy. Um, but the last 70 years at least, all of those administrations have had a dog shit fucking foreign policy. And most of it is based around a state that got created in 1948 called Israel. For some reason, they have an incredible influence over what we do. That's what this whole thing is about. The Iran stuff is strictly about Israel. It has nothing to do with America. And that's why this war isn't good for us. I know it's not good for us. Um, and, and like I said, the whole liberator thing is just so overplayed. And I'm not going to be gaslit by a bunch of fucking retards that don't understand foreign policy or history or just refuse to pay attention to it and are going to try to tell me that my tax dollars going to free somebody else is going to be great because you're going to displace those refugees to go to all the other countries. And some of them will probably fucking end up here. I mean, it's crazy the amount of refugees we've had to take from other places for shit that we've done. Somalia, Libya, I'm sure Yemen, Iraq. We got the whole shit in Mexico going on with the cartels. They're having open fucking war. But that's still even right next to us. That's still not a major problem until it leaks across our border. And I'm not talking about the drugs. I'm talking about the full scale cartel wars that are going on. I think it was Puerto Vallarta. Maybe, if I remember hearing correctly, that they were having like full scale war in the streets, cartel wise. Um, which I mean, I've never been to Mexico, and so my opinions are limited. But I've been told by people that Mexico is beautiful. People online. So let's keep that in perspective. They're like, Mexico is beautiful. It's a beautiful place. I love going there. All this, right? Yet, I only ever hear, uh, you know, I guess the negative things, and that's probably part of the internet. Um, but it just seems weird to me that so many people would flee a country that's beautiful and wonderful and awesome to come to a country that's fascistic and dominated by white people, and they hate us. They hate us, so we have to go in there, use their welfare, and change their system. That's what the fuck you guys are saying. Sorry, that's fucking insane. That seems crazy as shit to me. That's your plan. But hey, what do I know? Yuri Bezmenov in the 1980s, um, you know, outlined how Russia would undermine our system. That seems to be working. But back to the point at hand, the war in the Middle East for the Jews, and this just seems like the last chance they would have to do it. I agree with Tucker when I've listened to him talk about this. Um, is that the support for the Jewish people, or I should say Jewish people, because I don't have any problem with the Jewish people in general. What I have problem with is the same problem I have with our fucking government. Um, is that they're a bunch of Hippocratic dickheads who do whatever the fuck they want and are hypocritic. I said cratic, not doctors. Hypocritic motherfuckers who do whatever the fuck they want, don't give a shit about their constituents, and will continue to do so until this country goes bankrupt, and then they flee and go somewhere else, take all their money or whatever the fuck they have, assets and otherwise. And so it frustrates me to know that our foreign policy is dictated by a country that's basically our welfare state. Um, they can't afford to support themselves. They can't afford to support their own military. If we did not give them billions of dollars a year, they would cease to exist. Economically, they have nothing. They have no exports. They only import. They have no manufacturing, really. So, what the fuck do they have? Finance. That's it. If you go back and read about the Jewish communities, very interesting. Why usury was outlawed. And it was only after they were introduced to most of those communities that they were then kicked out of those countries and usury was outlawed. Where do you think loans and percentages and debt and all that stuff, the debt economy we have built, um, came from? You know? So it's very interesting to see just how much of our history maybe is tied with the Jewish aristocrats and what they've done to our country and what they've done to try to build their own country up. Um, And I just want to emphasize that you should not be mad at just straight up regular Jewish people, but you should be mad at Smotrich, Ben Gvir, Bibi Netanyahu. Um, I would say any one of their generals that probably exists in their military that's advising these strikes and things like that. The public figures, the Miriam Adelsons, the Adelson family, the Mark Levens, um, those kinds of guys that just yell out into the void or dictate foreign policy that then impacts and destroys the rest of our lives, ruins our economic standing. I'm going to say it right here that we're going to have another burst. Okay, the market can't just exponentially grow itself out. Um, at least not that I've seen yet. If he makes it happen, I'll give him a medal. I'll say fuck that was awesome, man. I don't know how you did it, but it's super great. But realistically, it's not been done yet. Economists will tell you it's difficult to exponentially inflate away your problem. Now, they argue that inflation is required, but I argue that there's nothing wrong with a little deflation. It's possible to have deflation and still be successful. We may not be the global empire, but a little deflation will make your populace, your citizens, a little bit more prosperous. I know it won't make the billionaires feel great, but the rest of us, we feel pretty good. I know it won't make your dick seem as big, or that you can loiter over me because you're more successful. But it does seem like a little bit of deflation would be good for everyone else. Now, how do we achieve it? I don't know. I'm not a fucking economist. But I know that we can't keep inflating away because the people like us, the people that are, mid to lower mid to poor, we won't be included in that. All of that will just become poor. That'll all just become poor. And I don't know where that goes. So these are the real problems though that we're facing with this Iran stuff. Um, And so it's important for people to pay attention and reject it and argue against it. Not that it matters. It didn't seem to matter. He didn't have any support, and he still fucking did it. But you have good people in Congress, like Massey. You have a couple of those individuals who are really trying to push against, um, this whole agreed upon shit by both sides, the Uniparty, and they're trying to primary Massey and get him out of Congress. And I say that if you live in Kentucky, you should put everything you got behind that guy. Whatever you can to put behind that guy. I've already donated to his campaign. Was it a lot? No. But I'm going to donate to a guy that I support, whether he lives in my state or not, because my state representatives fucking blow. But regardless, that's what we're dealing with Iran. At least that's what it seems like to me that we're dealing with Iran, and that's a cursory understanding. Um, there's much more to it, I'm sure, and we'll learn more as information comes out. But it just seems, another one of those really cool regime change wars that never benefits the American people and always benefits, some country in the Middle East called Israel. So very, very upsetting there. Let's, it's been a lot stuff that's happened. So I want to pivot to the Epstein files. So much more has come out since the last time I touched on this. Um, we can start with the fact that it seems, possibly it seems, and this is what people have reported, that Pizzagate might have been a real thing. if you knew about it back in 2016, I was a little young to really know too much. It was just kind of something you heard about. I didn't know a lot about it or what had happened. I've become much more informed as I've listened to other individuals tell the story of what it was about. Um, but if you don't know what Pizzagate is, essentially, John Podesta's emails got leaked. And if you don't know the Podesta family, they're a very well known Democratic family, very strong. I believe John Podesta was the Attorney General, something in that order, of the legal arm of Obama's administration. And basically, these are, very high up people. Um, and the Podesta family is disgusting. I mean, they just are. If you go and listen to Daryl Cooper's interview with Tucker Carlson, where he talks about Jeffrey Epstein, he does a small segment where he discusses Tony Podesta's house and how it's been featured in Time Magazine and how there's all kind of illicit stuff, art, including children, illicit depictions of dead children, sexualizations, all kinds of fucked up shit. And this was put in Time Magazine. I would like to point out. So, you know, we know that those systems are compromised, but it's just always kind of funny when they're like really that open about it. But anyway, so John Podesta's emails got leaked, and a lot of people saw this place. I think it was called Comet. I'm not sure. I haven't clearly heard the name of it. But it's a place located in DC that was a pizza shop, and all these conversations were revolving around this pizza shop. And just a lot of weird shit was being said, and a lot of things that seemed like coded fucking language for this pizza place. And so people were speculating and saying that, like, oh, they have an underground, like child sex trafficking ring type of situation. I don't know every detail relative to it or what they might have been doing. Located that centrally resonates in the basement of this fucking pizza place. Excuse me. Now, whether or not you believe that or think that's true, regardless, that's just the details that have been shared about what it was. But the funny thing is, there was a guy who went in there back in 2016 and shot in the building, shot around, didn't hit anyone, didn't really do any structural damage, but happened to hit the server that contained all of the camera footage that for that business. And he's saying, as he's getting arrested, I believe, I thought it was all here. Turns out it's all fake. Or something like that. Very propaganda-y, like we paid a guy to do it, and then da-da-da-da-da. So it seemed like a whole lot of horseshit the more I hear about it. The more I have heard about it. And here we are 10 years later, and they're getting the Epstein files, and we're hearing emails about pizza and grape soda. And the language with which they're using to talk about this shit. It's not, you'd have to be completely oblivious or you don't want to know, which is also okay. If you don't want to know, I get it. This shit's very upsetting. This isn't shit that you like to live with or things you like to fucking really think about. Me personally, I don't like to think about this shit. But maybe I'm a liar because it's all I listen to all the time, and this is the kind of stuff that fills my brain. So maybe I'm lying to myself. Who knows? Anyway, the whole point is that we now are seeing this Pizzagate thing come up in the Jeffrey Epstein stuff, in these Epstein files. And so these emails with other prominent individuals, and the one that I've heard from, and I heard it on Rogan that was talked about, and I think Tucker maybe too, uh, was he was talking to a urologist and they were talking about his erectile dysfunction. And then he said, after you take the pill, wash your hands and we'll go get some pizza and grape soda. First of all, what? You're going to take erectile dysfunction pill and go get some pizza? That sounds like Ben Stiller in Dodgeball when he's in his office and shoves the pizza in his pants because he's like trying not to be fat again. That was my immediate first fucking thought. Um, but outside of that, it's just very strange language. I mean, let's be realistic. Pizza and grape soda don't go together unless I've just been sleeping under a fucking rock. I mean, I'm not that old, but at 30, you think I would have had pizza and grape soda if it was this combination that these people are just like, yeah, this is the shit. So, and then they also use beef jerky as one I've heard of too. Um, what is all this? It's clear, it's coded language. What exactly it represents, I don't know. The general speculation because of Epstein's connections with underage girls or barely legal women and trafficking them and things like that, it's generally believed to be like child stuff, which very well could. Seems reasonable. What was the email I heard Joe talking about? Um, where he was saying uh, there was an email exchange he had with a woman, and she had said something like, "Oh, I heard about this guy who was trafficking underage girls for sex," and he had replied in that email and said, um, "Oh, well, you'd be surprised to find out that that guy is me." So we do have some evidence in there that he is, he's claiming and telling people. Now, let us keep a realistic view on this. Okay, there's going to be some fake things thrown in to discredit what is legitimate and what is real. Um, that's just the game of the game. Propaganda doesn't stop, especially with something like this. I mean, hell, it seems like we started a fucking war to avoid this. The Iran connects to the Epstein files because it seems like Epstein was probably an intelligence agent, probably more for Mossad than anyone else. But it seems he dabbled in all kinds of stuff. And he was really, really into the Jewish supremacy thing, referring to people as goyams and goys and stuff like that, and really, really was into Jewish supremacy. It seemed like, and so don't be surprised to find out maybe more about his connections to Israel and what he might have done for Israel in relation to the rest of the world and what kind of information and dirt he was gathering. Um, I'm sure he probably knew Jonathan Pollard very well. And if you don't know who Jonathan Pollard is, he is the man, the Jewish man, who gave state secrets out in the 80s during the Cold War to Russia, sold them, and was imprisoned for 30 years, came home to Israel and was treated like a fucking war hero, and then proceeded to tell all Jewish Americans that they should flip on the United States. So, wouldn't be surprised to find out there's something about him in those files. And I know this has dominated so much of the headlines and so much of what we've all kind of been talking about lately. And maybe for you, if you're somebody who doesn't, you just want to be in your bubble, I totally get it and understand. And I know that shit like this can be scary and frustrating, and it is. It legitimately is. I'm not even kidding that I live with a low level of anxiety from just digesting this information all day long, but this is the only way that you could stay, actively against it. Um, is to just be as informed as possible. Know the information. Make sure that you're aware of what's fucking going on around you. And when someone tells you what they are, believe them. You know what I mean? We learned in 2008, and I wasn't old enough. That's the thing. A lot of this stuff happened at a time in which I couldn't pay attention to it. You know what I mean? In 2008, I was fucking 13. You think I was worried about Jeffrey Epstein? Huh? You think I was Epsteining it up? Being like, hey, what's this Epstein guy doing in Miami? No, I was fucking being a kid. And now that I'm an adult, I'm pissed because there's a lot of motherfuckers out there that didn't take this shit seriously. That were like, oh, I'm making money, the economy, da 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 da, and just let the elites do whatever the fuck they want. There's a difference between having a ruling class. There's always been a fucking ruling class. And you're either part of it or you're not. But there's a difference between having a ruling class that maybe favors themselves more. That's to be expected. That's human nature. But the ruling class who sacrifices your children for wars, your children for their pleasure, your children for their enjoyment. I mean, I don't have any kids and I don't plan to, but if my nieces and nephews get subjected to this stuff, you don't think that I would lose my fucking mind? And there's so many people who have these stories of things that have happened to them like that. And, It's our job as American people. That's why I do this. And people ask me that, why do it? What's the point? What's the purpose? And it's like I'm just trying to inform somebody, anybody, whoever wants to fucking listen to this, whoever wants to hear what I have to say. And I'm just regurgitating. That's the thing. I'm regurgitating from other people. So you can go and listen to Part of the Problem with Dave Smith. You can go listen to Provoked with Daryl Cooper, and Scott Horton, who are great libertarians. Or Scott Horton's libertarian, Daryl Cooper is right wing, but kind of center. Um, go listen to Tucker. I know he's right wing for most people, but he's still got some good points to be made. Information that's very accurate. He just did an interview with Mike Huckabee, and we basically learned that Mike Huckabee thinks Israel is better than the United States in some ways. You know, and it's like you're the U.S. ambassador to Israel, not the Israel ambassador to the U.S. But I think bro's just been there so long he forgot where the fuck he was at and who he works for. And that's something we really got to try to get back to is making the government work for us. But there's so much going on in our everyday lives, and and I get it, bro. I get it. You got 4 kids. You got to go to work. You got to go to church or do after school activities, all this kind of stuff. But one day your kids are going to grow up and they're going to have to reap what you sow. I'm not telling you to be a political activist, and I'm not saying you need to start a podcast. I'm not saying that you need to take part in debates or do any of that type of shit, but at least learn, educate yourself, teach your children. Okay? Don't let them fall into the same thing we did where we weren't paying attention. Give them an opportunity to learn this information when they're old enough. Don't come to your 5-year-old and be like, "You've been learning about the Epstein files? Check this out. They want to grape you." Don't fucking do that to your 5-year-old because, that might shatter their worldview. But, when your kid's like 15, you sit them down and you're like, "Hey, I think this stuff's kind of important and I'd like to try to talk to you about it if you're willing to listen." Um, and I'm like this because my dad always did that. And I remember things my dad would say about the government and all kinds of stuff like that. And he kind of planted the seed of my already virulent distrust of establishment. And it's really funny because I had people in high school that I would argue, I mean, freshman, sophomore in high school, and I would argue with people saying that the government is selling drugs. Okay. You think they confiscate drugs and they don't sell drugs? This was at 16. And I had guys who would consider themselves to be much smarter than me, who go, "What are you talking about? You think the government's selling drugs?" Like, "Yeah, you fucking retard. I do think the government's selling drugs." Oh, guess what? Turns out I was fucking right about that. The government has been selling drugs, was selling drugs, is selling drugs, whatever, dude. They created the crack epidemic, the opium fields. I mean, come on, bro. The list goes on and on. And all I'm simply saying with this is that it's super important that at a certain time you take the chance to educate your kids about the system that is working against them so that they can try to bat against the system and make it work for them. And maybe somebody, your kid will step up and be a person who makes change. Who knows? But the reality is that if nobody says anything, if we don't take any time to do this, if we never educate the youth about history, real history, not the history they teach in school, but the actual history they can learn, the things that are kept from you, you know? And I know that's difficult because teachers are super fucking liberal. And listen, I'm not here to argue about the liberal versus conservative debate, but just the point and frame is that, liberal ideologies aren't based in fact, the same way that some conservative ideologies aren't based in fact. It's all about how I feel or like the superior morality. And it's like, can we just live in an objective reality where the truth of the matter is what we all base our discussions on? We can have discussions about our feelings. We can talk about our feelings. Hello, how are you? We can talk about our feelings, and that's fine. But that's not going to be what I base policy on. That's not going to be how I function my society, how you feel or how this other person feels. Um, the reality is we have to go by what the truth is, the objective facts, things that can't be disputed because they've already been proven. So that's the way that I look at it. I respect the fact that you have feelings, but I respectfully don't give a fuck about them either. I don't care about your feelings if you're someone I don't know. Now, my friends, my family, people I'm close to, people I love, I care about how they feel, and I will have a conversation, a subjective conversation. And I think a lot of people don't understand the difference between objective and subjective. I'd like to point out that objective are things that cannot be disputed, and subjective are things that are subject to a perspective or point of view. Just want to clarify that because I think some people struggle with that fucking idea. But your opinions and feelings are subjective. And if you're someone I care about or love, I will have a subjective conversation. And we could even come to a disagreement and agree to disagree. But at the end of the day, I'm not giving that to some random fucking stranger out in the middle of, decency is different from respect. I don't owe you respect. I do, however, believe we owe each other decency. The decency to say, excuse me, please, thank you, no sir, yes ma'am, all that kind of stuff that that we've kind of ingratiated in our society that we believe to be polite and decent. I don't, however, you don't deserve my respect of saying that I see you and you're clearly a man in a dress, but you would prefer to be referred to as a woman. I don't owe you anything in that regard because I don't agree with your opinions or beliefs, which is fine. We could disagree in that situation, but it's the whole idea that you are owed something that you have not earned just by existing. And that's a problem with a lot of people, I think, in society. And I think that's part of you. It's maybe this is crazy to relate to, but that kind of seems like the Israel thing. You go back to Iran, they feel that they are biblically entitled to the landmass in which Iran, Iraq, Libya, parts of Egypt, all this stuff, Judea and Samaria, I believe it's called, the regional things that might be referring to. And Mike Huckabee went ahead and said that they should take it all. Granted, he recanted about a minute or two later, said, well, maybe we shouldn't let them take all of that land. But, they believe they have this biblical precedent. So it's something that they believe they are entitled to and have not earned. And it's funny how that's something that's infiltrating the youth, infiltrating our systems. And it relates directly back to this country that's created a conflict and has control of our government via proxy of either morality or money. So, anyway, I think that's it for me this week. I hope I brought you enough terror, and anxiety to get you through the rest of your day. If you're out there listening to this or watching it, like I said, take a time, listen to some of those other podcasts. I'm simply relating information I learned from them. Everybody gets it from some source. If you're interested in it, don't just listen to mainstream media. They're generally propaganda machines who are going to lie to you. I think that's the real problem with why so many of the older folks are just saying this is good without really understanding why it's not. And they're just like, Trump said it's good, so it should fucking be good, you know? And the thing I respect and do love about my peers of my age is that whether they're on one side of the aisle or the other, they're not just going to take whatever the person in charge says and say, oh, that's fun. Yeah, definitely, whatever. No, we all question it, and we all sit there and go, this doesn't make any sense. This is kind of fucking stupid. I don't want to do this. And they go, we're doing it. And that's when you go, so you don't give a fuck about me. And I think a lot more people are waking up to that. At least people that can connect because of the internet. So thanks for joining me this week. I really appreciate it. I hope to get back to a regular schedule, next, dropping one every week, every Monday, like I've been doing. We just had a little time where I took some time off for me and for life getting in the way. So appreciate it. Thank you guys so much. Enjoy the rest of your week. Peace.